that money available in October. And it was last October, as you recall, we spent funds, and in fact, we didn't spend it all. We left some for this April town meeting, which we are going to spend that money already in October, in April. So, my feeling is that any priority items that need to be certainly be spent from free cash in October, but does not necessarily have to come out of the.
Well, I was just asking
this
because
fund.
I know it's available money.
And
so
then
we're gonna have.
the other concern was, as you recall, we've already taken out of the town government budget to help the schools. We've delayed the spending. We've taken the small cap out of the town for $120,000, of which the intent is to spend that money in October. Fund that in October, in addition to $50,000 from the school budget. And I've got things mixed up, don't I? It's 120 from the school, and it was 80.
So we're going to move forward and give them what was it, $70,000 for books? Is that the small cap?
Yeah, we're gonna give
Yeah,
70,000, right.
$70,000 back?
That's in small cap article of this year's budget.
So could we move?
Take out 120, Michael, and then we'll give him back 50 at the,
So could we make a plan that any monies that were left over, we could put back in the cap for fire, police, and building maintenance? Because those are the things that I'd like to see put back. That's one of the big reasons I'd like to see the override, because I know that those departments are very unhappy. And I know this is gonna put me out of favor with some people, but I feel that government, just in general, that our first responsibility is public safety, and that means fire and police and things of that nature. And I'd just like to see that money go back in at some point because it's important.
It'll be up to the board to decide.
Well, if I could have some I'm not asking for anything specific. I'm just saying if I could have some kind of idea that money would go back in October and we'd be able to see it, then I would have no problem taking the override off.
I assume you're looking at this page here that is in the back of the override question?
The one that was in the packet tonight.
Yeah.
I would just like to see those go back because that's kind of safety items for members of departments.
I don't see that being a big deal. It's not a lot of money. Well, Steve?
A couple of comments, and then some questions, I guess, to my fellow board members as to how we should proceed. First of all, if I'm correct, nothing's changed since last week. We have no new members. We have nothing that's occurred other than the finance planning team has met in the school committee.
you were unaware that the school committee withdrew their request for an override 4-1.
I was unaware.
What's that?
I was unaware.
Right.
But that's-
changed.
No, but other than that, nothing else has changed. And I guess what I find a bit disconcerting, well, first of all, two things. One, I think we're considering taking a look at whether or not we should be having an override or not, again, because of, once again, we have this windfall with a net of about $384,000, which gets us a little bit closer to where we wanted to be in relation to properly funding public education in North Reading. Based upon the numbers that the town administrator gave us, we're still $386,300 short of filling the pyramid the superintendent and the school committee
No,
provided
not
us.
exactly. Take the $50,000 that we've,
Of small cap for the school.
cap.
$336,300. Whatever, but close.
Well, you're talking about the priority and, yeah. they have agreed to delay the capital expenditure until October.
Nonetheless, for months now, we've been agonizing over the prioritization of our funding and our funding sources and where it's going to go. And I think we've all pretty much come to the consensus that the school department over the last few years has taken an inordinate hit, and we've made great strides in trying to restore some of those. And to steal a line from Mrs. Castro over there, public education shouldn't be optional. And it is optional at this point. We're still not meeting the basic needs as put forth by the superintendent and the school committee. And I find it a little bit disconcerting that they're willing to back off at this point. I'm somewhat surprised and concerned. And I guess I still don't understand the rationale why, other than it appears to be political reasons, because we know we're going to be short next year, when there's no doubt about it. We're probably going to be short $1.7 million, best estimates. But that's not going to solve the problem here either. To me, we need to do what we... I don't think we as a board went far enough in trying to meet it. I stated that before. And I'd like the board to consider two options. If one of the options on the table is to pull the override off, I think at this point the only way that I would consider switching my position on the override is if we come up with some more money earmarked for education. And in my conversation with the town administrator, and we talked about this before too, in relation to the change in health plan benefits, not the health plan itself, but the benefits under the plan, which is the deductibles, from a $5 to a $10 copay, and from a 25 emergency room to a 50, and then some residual effects in relation to mail orders for prescriptions. The latest numbers are somewhere around $200,000 can be realized by that one change. I understand that the administration is in conversation with the unions in regard to this matter. I think we as a board need to take a strong position in assisting to effectuate that change. And I think the best way of doing that is to factor it into our budget proposal, whereby we should cut $200,000 from the employee benefits, health insurance benefits line item. And if we do not come to a consensus or an agreement with the unions, then we should, as we spoke with the school committee earlier, because they're two-thirds of the workforce here, they would have to absorb two-thirds of the loss, of the cost. However, what they would be absorbing, the two-thirds would be, basically two-thirds of the $200,000 I'm proposing not being transferred over. They would still realize some additional monies. What it means to the town side is approximately $67,000
Of additional cuts.
of additional cuts. What I would suggest to the board is that, and we should do it in the form of a motion, is that we cut the health benefits line item, employee benefits line item by $200,000, and in addition, cut the salary pool by $67,000, and move $200,000 to the school department budget and $67,000 from the salary pool to the reserve fund. If we're successful, the administration is successful in negotiating the change with the unions, then the finance committee would have the latitude of transferring those funds back to the salary account. It would have no effect on the employment base and employee base of the town of North Reading. So, to me, if we do something like that, that's movement getting us closer to where we should be. It still doesn't get us to where we need to be. I would then consider taking the override off. If that's not going to, okay.
The one question that I have associated with putting money into the reserve fund and then asking the finance committee to put it back, assuming that the negotiations are successful. Right. doesn't necessarily represent what I believe to be the four corners of use of the reserve fund. Maybe the vice chair of the.
Well, it all depends, it's
I mean,
unforeseen.
maybe
it's
we
an
need a
un-
different mechanism to
Well,
accomplish.
no, it's an unforeseen set of circumstances. We don't know what's going to happen at this point. Town meeting is gonna happen much sooner than, the end of these negotiations. And again, if we come to an agreement before town meeting, the motion never has to be made. But, it's unforeseen because we don't know what the results of those negotiations are going to be. So I think it's an appropriate place to place it.
I'm gonna ask Don to comment on that, please.
I think it stretches the unforeseen part of that. What the arrangement is on health insurance is now, what we're hoping to do is to change that by changing the co-pays and co-pays for doctors. Which I think is a great idea.
It's subject to negotiations. We don't
I
know
don't,
the outcome.
I don't see that qualifying if that doesn't happen as being unforeseen. I
If-
mean, I think we can foresee the problem if it isn't adopted by the union, so there's nothing unforeseen about that.
No, but if they do adopt it, which is the unforeseen here,
That's-
if they do adopt it, then the funds are available in the reserve fund to transfer it back to meet the needs of the employment needs of general government. To me, it's certainly
I think what you've
squishy
got-
enough, and we don't know what the outcome's going to be.
You're ending up with is free cash, is what you're ending up with, is that if you don't spend it, it's gonna go to free cash.
Right.
It isn't that goes into the
And
reserve
if
fund
it-
as something that doesn't have to meet the standard of immediate and unforeseen.
The other thing is that if it's not successful, and we move the money into the reserve fund, it really isn't there, it's just a paper transaction, where at the end of the year, when you close the books, that $67,000 will not be there, because we don't have the money. We didn't realize any savings.
You didn't put anything on the reserve fund.
Pardon me?
You didn't put it in the
In
reserve.
essence, we didn't.
You did not.
Unless we have successful negotiations, then it's there, because then you've realized the savings. And then you can move it back to where we originally would want to have appropriated. So, I'm open to suggestions, I mean, as to how you want to do it. And what that does, my suggestion is to allow us the opportunity to fill those positions again, or whatever, and again, I took it out of the salary pool, so the town administrator would have greater latitude and flexibility within the salary accounts to make up the $67,000 if we had to, rather than pinpointing specific budgets and pulling it out of there. So it would have greater flexibility. Again, they don't have the same flexibility as the administration does not have the same flexibility as the school administration. What I'm looking to do is provide the administration with greater flexibility, providing the opportunity for the unions to assist in closing the gap here and effectuating some real change, and also saving some jobs. So that's part of the suggestion. And if the board isn't going to buy into that, my next suggestion is that we should revisit what's on our override list.
Could we do one at a time?
Yeah,
Because you did a motion and...
no, I didn't make a
No,
motion.
no,
No, I didn't.
no, you
I
did?
said
Oh, I'm
it
sorry, I
should
thought
be
you
in the
made a
form of a
motion.
vote. I didn't make the
I thought you
motion.
said you was moving to.
No,
Oh, okay,
I
I'm
think I'd
sorry.
like a little discussion, but the other part of this equation for me, just letting the members know here, is that I believe if we are gonna move forward with an override, and there appears to be a consensus of the policy planning team that we should move forward without an override, then we should really just make it sort of cut and dry for the people. And I believe last week, the majority of this board made the right decision in allowing the general public the opportunity to properly fund education in North Reading, and also to take a look at the trash fees. 4 members of the board took the position to give people the choice. I think some of these other items that we have in here, while they're important to us, I don't think they're necessarily appropriate for a general operating override. We're asking people to raise their tax levy limits for these specific items forever and a day, for $6,200, for $2,800, for $5,000. So if we could just go back and revisit the override amount and just include what's necessary to fully fund the schools which is a 336, 297,